Hello, and you join me at a motorway service station on the M62 in the north of England, I think it's fair to say. And welcome to this first video regarding a Rover 25, which I think somebody out there might want to buy. And as we leave the motorway services, I should explain to you that I am driving home, trying to avoid these potholes, to the Peak District, which is where I live. And I did not expect to be doing so in this car, but I am. And this is a car that is for sale. And over the space of the next 7 days, I'm jolly well going to try to sell it. Now, my initial sales pitch is not going to be the best informed one, because as I say, this is an entirely unexpected thing, and I don't know all that much about this car. What can I tell you? It's a Rover 25, arguably the best car that Rover ever made, certainly one of my absolute favourites. I own two Rover 25s myself. They are permanent members of my fleet, and I really am a huge fan of them. Now, this one is what's known as, well, it's pre-facelift, first and foremost, but secondly, and equally importantly, it is what's known as pre-project drive. In other words, this car was manufactured before the Project Drive initiative, which, for those of you who don't know, was a massive and intense series of cost-cutting exercises whereby certain things were just no longer put onto the cars. Some materials were reduced in quality, most notably the carpets. But this is before any of that cost-saving shenanigans. So this is one of the prime examples. It's also the 1.4 K-Series engine, which is probably the best of the bunch. Again, it's a strong favourite amongst those who know, and it's certainly a strong favourite of mine. Now, I'll address the elephant in the room right at the beginning. You will have heard, quite possibly, a lot of talk about the K-Series Rover engine and HGF, or head gasket failure. Quite happy to address that. If you maintain and drive the car properly, head gasket failure should not be an issue. If the head gasket has already failed and been repaired and upgraded, head gasket should not be an issue. Do you need to worry about it? Not really. If you do get one that hasn't been replaced and it does go, it's not the end of the world. A specialist will sort it out for you, and it's not going to cost you the earth. It's certainly not going to be the cause of the car's end of life. But let me give you the rules when it comes to Rover head gaskets. Right, the rules are quite simple. You need to be on the ball when it comes to doing your vehicle checks. One check in particular, coolant. It's important. Now, you should do this on any car. You should certainly do it on any modern classic or classic, and you should definitely do it on a Rover 25. Check your coolant regularly, as in weekly, at a minimum. Check the level and make sure that it's the correct coolant at the correct strength or dilution, if you like. That sounds like a big task. It's really not. Lift the bonnet, have a quick look. You know, that's all that's involved. If it needs topping up, top it up. And just be on the lookout for, obviously, keep an eye on your temperature gauge. You should always be doing that in any car anyway. And, you know, if you get some massive telltale like the heater suddenly blowing cold instead of hot, that should be telling you that your coolant might need looking at. So nothing that a proper, as I would call it, a proper car owner wouldn't do as a matter of course anyway. The other rule when it comes to the old K series, you can't rev them when they're cold. That more than anything is what will kill them. Don't rev them. You've got a rev counter right in front of you. Certainly in this model you have. Now you don't want to be seeing that needle go past the number 3 until the engine is at full operating temperature. That means coolant and oil. You don't get an oil temperature gauge in this car, you get a coolant temperature gauge. So wait until your coolant is, you know, showing the normal operating level, in other words halfway up the gauge. Then give it another minute or so for luck, and then you can use all of the rev range freely. And do use all of the rev range. The K series is an engine that thrives on being revved. It loves it, and it will reward you with amazing sounds and an extraordinary amount of forward propulsion. You might think that a little 1.4 engine, you might think that's going to be pretty tardy. Oh no, it's not. Not once you really start poking the old accelerator and getting up to the upper reaches of the rev range. And there's an added bonus, it's an incredibly frugal engine. So, win-win. Perfectly good motorway cruiser. I'm doing the maximum legal speed. It's not too noisy, perfectly comfortable, perfectly relaxed. You could literally drive from Land's End to John O'Groats in one of these. Not a problem. Okay, well, as far as I'm concerned, this little car passed the motorway test with flying colours, really. Nice nippy acceleration to join the motorway. Cruises at 70 perfectly happily, and would no doubt do more, but I'm a law-abiding kind of chap. There are cameras everywhere, there are unmarked police cars, and I want to keep my license. Very comfortable, very relaxed. No issues to report in terms of the motorway, but we are about to drop into a place called Broad Bottom, which I always call Fat Arse in my mind. And if you've ever visited Broad Bottom, you will know that it is the world centre of every kind of speed hump and bump imaginable. So if there are any issues with the suspension of this car, we're just about to find out about them. So here we go, coming into the 20-mile-an-hour speed limited area, and here comes the first of the bumps, so listen out for any rattles or clunks. Not a sausage. So far so good. Now here's a different kind of speed humpy bump to, yeah, fine. Bigger one, absolutely fine. The washer jets could do with repositioning. Mileage, by the way, the mileage as we stand at the moment is 58,599. So really low mileage car this, and I'm trying to remember what year it is. I think it's, God, am I remembering correctly, is it 2001, which sausage, right? I'm not faking this, I'm actually videoing it. If there was a nasty clunk or rattle or squeak, you would hear it. And you can't, can you? Because there aren't any. Let's do a double bump. Absolutely fine. Why stop now, just when we're enjoying it? There's another one. That was a big one. Still no problems. And I will also point out that it is January the 22nd. And that means here in the UK, it's the middle of winter. And we're also in the middle of a storm called Aisha, I think. And all of that means that it's cold. But I'm not cold, I'm toasty warm, because the heaters in these are brilliant. Now, one common problem is something called a heater resistor. And the heater resistor, if that becomes faulty, which they do, then your heater will only work on position 3 and 4. The blower will only work on 3 and 4. It will not work on 1 and 2. This one, absolutely fine. Blower on off, then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Yet another speed bump. Now then, our next test on this fabulous little car, and believe me, at this stage I have decided it's a fabulous little car, is we're going to climb Monks Road, or well, we're going to climb Cumbria leading to Monks Road. This is an exceptionally steep hill, 1 in 3 in places. So let's see how the mighty 1.4K series copes with this. It's a lot steeper than it looks on the video. And we are flying up it. Absolutely flying up it. Not the most torquey engine in the world, but you can always fall back on revs. Remember what I said, in a K series, revs are your friends, they are not to be feared. Believe me, that is a properly steep hill. And really, not a problem at all. Right, let's test the light, shall we? Now, in my experience, lights are one of the Rover 25 strong points. I mean, this is a fully dark country road, and it's like we've got floodlights. And on the subject of twisty country roads, again, one of the strongest points of a Rover 25 are the handling and the steering. For well, I don't know how, a smallish, unpretentious, humble car, they've got the handling and steering characteristics of, well, I've driven pseudo sports cars that don't handle and steer as well as this, and that's genuine. Now there's a reason for this. The Rover 25, which this is, evolved from the Rover 200. Now the Rover 200 had amongst its range some hot hatch versions, the GTI, the VI, the BRM, and they had tweaked steering and tweaked suspension, as you might expect from a hot hatch. However, when 200 turned into 25, that tweaked sporty suspension and steering, those characteristics, they were just applied across the full range. So that is why any 25 that you drive will handle and steer really surprisingly well, because they've got hot hatch heritage. And now we've got a bit of a brake test as we're dropping down the hill into Chapel on the Frith. Now, only the very top model 25 had disc brakes all round, so I'm presuming that this chap is going to be discs at the front but drums at the rear. But as long as they're set up properly and maintained properly, they're going to do the job absolutely fine and dandy. And that's exactly what these brakes do. They're fine, they're great, they do what you want them to do. I kind of think that you shouldn't really notice your brakes. They should just be there and stop you in the way that you would expect and want them to stop you. And you should only notice them when they're not doing that. And these are doing exactly that. So that's all I've really got to say on them. Actually, that's not all I've got to say on the brakes, because I believe in being honest. I've just parked up in a supermarket car park because there's something I need to fetch for my supper, which I'll be having later tonight. And I've just noticed that the brakes bind very, very slightly, almost imperceptibly, and only momentarily. So they're just not releasing as immediately and totally as they should. We're only talking about, you know, fraction of a second, something like that, but I did notice it. But you know, that could just be down to lack of use, and we'll use this card a bit over the next week, unless it sells immediately, in which case somebody else will use it a bit, and that might well free them off a bit. I say that might free them off a bit. I'm making it sound as if they're much more of a problem than they really are. They're not. Right, let me demonstrate. Okay, I've got the handbrake on. Handbrake is fine, by the way. I'm in neutral, and I'm on about a 1 in 250 slope. Handbrake off, and I'm rolling. So ignore all of that, they're not binding. You've joined me on one of my favourite roads. This is the road from, well, it's the only main road across the tops of this part of the week, and it will take you from effectively Chapel or Dove Holes, and it will take you through to Chesterfield. And it is on a road like this that you will really fall in love with the Rover 25, and you will find out that the humble little 25 is an exceptionally quick and able A to B car in real world driving. The combination of all the things I've mentioned, the peppy K-Series engine, the fantastic steering, suspension, handling setup, they just make it natural to drive with a little bit of verve and aplomb, and far from finding yourself getting in the way of more modern traffic, you'll find they're getting in your way. And finally, as we drop into Stony Middleton, I'm going to make the case for this being the perfect entry level, if you will, modern classic car. My reasonings are this. Number one, price point. Very affordable. Very affordable. Now, I must admit, make it clear, this is not a use it and abuse it modern car. It requires a more involved sense of ownership. Not massively, but a little bit more. You need to be more aware of the car. You need to be a little bit more hands-on, more sympathetic to driving and owning a modern classic. But getting back to the point, right? Yeah, price point, affordable. I'm going to be asking, I think, £1,150 for this car. That's not a nonsensical amount of money. Also, it is a modern classic. That means you will get classic car insurance that will be available to you. What does that mean? Well, it means cheaper insurance, basically. You'll have a limited number of miles that you can drive in a year, but it means that, oh, and it will need to be a second car to get to qualify for classic insurance. They won't give you classic insurance if it's your everyday car. But that will be cheaper, and you'll have the option of what's called agreed value. In other words, if you need to make an insurance claim, then a previously agreed value is paid out on the vehicle, and there's no arguments about that. It's economical. This will easily do. Even jiggering about on mixed use, you're easily going to get well into the 40s. And on a run, you'll get over 50 miles per gallon. It's as quick as you need it to be, probably quicker. As I've shown you, as an A to B car on normal roads, it's as quick as pretty much most things out there. It's a perfectly competent motorway cruiser, but most of all, it is fun. These are a happy little car that they will encourage you to drive them in a way that is guaranteed to put a smile on your face. It will make driving them a little bit of an occasion. And if you've never had a classic or modern classic before, they're great fun to own. They're a hobby as well as, or rather than being a fit for purpose tool. You know, you'll tinker with them, you'll improve them, you'll valet them on a Sunday, unless you're going to a car show. And the MG Rover community is one of the most thriving car communities in the UK. So pretty much any weekend you care to name, there will be a plethora of community car meets or shows. So you will find that your car is, or certainly a car like this, will be a ticket to an additional social life if that's what you fancy, if that's what floats your boat. And they're a fantastic group of people. Now, does it cost more to keep a car like this on the road than it does a modern car? After all, it's old, fairly old, 23 years old I think we said, didn't we? It might break down. Well, yeah, it might. But I would argue that it's cheaper to run. I would argue that you need to turn your main beam off. I would argue that it's cheaper to run than a modern car. Parts are easily available, plentiful, and they are cheap. It's not a difficult car to work on by any means. The K-Series 1.4 unit is inherently a very, very reliable engine. Trust me, I've got every K-Series engine going between my fleet. Quite literally, I've got 1.1, 1.4, 1.6, 1.8, 2 litre and 2.5 litre. I'm telling you, they're a reliable engine, and I would know. But bear this in mind. When you buy a modern car, what's the biggest single cost usually? Depreciation. Every mile you put on it and every year older that it gets, it becomes worth less money. Well, this won't. The only reason this would go down in value is if the condition significantly deteriorates. And you're not going to let that happen, are you? No, you're going to look after it like a member of the family. And not only will the value not go down, it'll go up. Values of these cars are increasing as they become increasingly rare. That means that they become increasingly sought after, and the values will rise, especially for the really good examples. And this one is a really good example for a number of reasons. So it's a very cost-effective thing as well. You've got relatively cheap tax, you've certainly got availability of cheap insurance, you've got no depreciation, in fact you've got an appreciating asset, you've got a hell of a lot of fun, and you've got a hobby. Honestly, what more could you want? Everybody should own a Rover 25. And again, I am not telling others to do what I wouldn't do myself. I own 2 of these, and I would happily own more. I would happily own this one, except all of my cars are silver, and this one isn't silver. Now, I've got loads of other things to tell you about this car. All I've done so far is I've driven it, but bear in mind, I've just driven this on a 60 or 65 mile journey in the middle of winter across the foothills of the Pennines into the heart of the Peak District, over the top of the High Peak. And go on, you can't deny it. It's been brilliant. It's been fabulous on the motorway. It's been great in the twisty roads, and it's wonderful here. The temperature gauge hasn't shifted, so don't listen to any stories about these always overheating or any of that nonsense. It's just not true. It's used, well, it's sipped away at the petrol. When I set off, I put 15 quid of fuel in, and I've not got anywhere near using all of that. And it's been a joy to drive. I've loved it. Every time I go out and drive a Rover 25, I love it. And I do bang on about them. I've been banging on about them on my channel since I started, however long ago that was. 18 months, coming up 2 years. And it's because it's true. These are a fabulous, happy little car, and they will make you happy. And this is a really good one. Now, there's loads more to tell you and to show you. Obviously, it's dark, not much I can do. I will, of course, show you the inside. Leather seats, thank you very much. Wood trim, if you please. Air conditioning, which may or may not actually work. And a lot of more unusual things that, well, I'll tell you about those as we come to them in daylight. The one gaping gap, if you like, and it is literally a gap, there is no radio in this car. Don't worry about that. I'm going to source an original OEM correct stereo for this, and I will put it in. Now, I say that with some confidence because I'm pretty damn sure I know where there is one. I think I'm correct in saying that the correct fitment for this car would be a Blaupunkt CC32, and I'm 99.9% certain I know where there is one, so I'm pretty sure I can get that sorted, and the rest of it I will show you. I'm going to be doing a series of videos on this car over the next week, unless it sells, and you know, at the point it sells, I'll stop making videos about it. But remember, that is my task. I've got to try and sell this car as a little challenge within the next 7 days and find a deserving home for it. So there are going to be more videos to come. Do hit that subscribe button if you'd like to be alerted when the new videos arrive, and you will probably also see this car on some of the normal sales channels. And that is it for this first video. Thank you for watching, if indeed you have, and I'll catch you next time. The really annoying thing is this car actually drives better than either of mine, but I'm not going to admit that. I wish it was silver.